Have you ever felt like you were being watched? Like someone, somewhere, was silently observing you with an intensity that froze your very soul? Tonight, I share with you the story of the Smiling Man, one of the most infamous encounters ever whispered about on the internet. It was late, around 2 a.m., when our protagonist, let's call him Chris, decided to take a walk. He lived in a quiet city, and the streets were deserted, bathed in the orange glow of flickering streetlights. Chris often walked at night to clear his mind, but this night would be different. As he strolled down the empty sidewalk, he noticed something out of the corner of his eye. A figure stood across the street, perfectly still. The man was tall, unnaturally so, dressed in a suit that seemed slightly too tight. His head was tilted back, and his mouth stretched into an impossibly wide smile. Chris tried to ignore him, chalking it up to some late-night drunk, but when he looked again, the man had moved. He was no longer standing still. He was walking, no, gliding, directly toward Chris. His smile never faltering, panic set in, but Chris didn't want to seem afraid. He quickened his pace, his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced over his shoulder. The Smiling Man was closer now, his movements jerky and unnatural, as though he were a puppet on invisible strings. Then he heard it, a faint, chilling giggle that sent shivers down his spine. Chris broke into a run, but the Smiling Man matched his pace effortlessly. His laughter grew louder, more maniacal, echoing through the empty streets. Chris darted into an alley, hoping to lose him. He pressed himself against the wall, his breathing ragged, his ears straining to hear any sign of pursuit. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then a whisper. "Why are you running?" Chris whipped around, but the alley was empty. His mind raced. Was he hallucinating? Dreaming? Slowly, he edged back toward the street, his eyes darting in every direction. When he turned the corner, the Smiling Man was there, just inches from his face, grinning impossibly wide. Chris screamed, stumbling backward and falling to the ground. The Smiling Man crouched down, his head cocked to the side, his eyes boring into Chris's soul. "You're fun," he whispered, his voice dripping with malice. Then, without warning, he stood up and walked away, his laughter fading into the distance. Chris never walked alone at night again. He moved out of the city within weeks, but the memory of the Smiling Man haunted him. Late at night, in the stillness of his new home, he sometimes heard that laughter, faint and far away, or sometimes too close for comfort. If you ever find yourself alone in the dark, and you see someone smiling at you from afar, don't stop. Don't look back, because you never know if it's just a stranger or something far worse. Have you met the Smiling Man?